The person who goes in a coma or comes out is very different, right?
Okay.
We never prepared for death.
Yeah.
We had the conversation of the divorce, right?
Our love story does have two sides to it, right? Because she didn't know that we're dating for as long as I thought we were.
I remember with Fresh in a Box, it's like, how are you selling these vegetables again?
Yeah.
It's like, on the internet. I'm like, I don't know if that works.
Welcome back to Family Wealth with Esther, the podcast that's shaking up the family business world. And we're so excited to be back. This is actually one of the episodes that I've been looking forward to when we were still actually conceptualizing the podcast. And today we have a really amazing couple with us, Kuda and Noma Musasiwa, co-founders of Fresh in a Box and Africa AI. So Kuda and Noma, welcome to Family Wealth with Esther.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us. Great show.
So yeah, let's go to the beginning. All right, the genesis. Tell us the last story. So this I'm directing at Noma. We want to know how the journey began. The last story evolving into a partnership. Because I think, actually, before you answer, what made me actually want to reach out to you, I said to you earlier, was I loved the way Kuda talks about you. So I follow him on X, and I think many people do, Begotten Son. And I loved how he actually speaks about you. I mean, I didn't know you, and he speaks so well of you, and especially in the workspace. He talks about your efficiency, and he's always giving you like great shout outs. I was like, oh.
He is a sweetheart,
Yeah.
isn't he? So we met at, or what made our worlds collide was the passion that we had for politics, if I could say it in a broader term, right? So I was in Viva Zimbabwe, and he was helping with that. I think you were consulting on that at the time. That's the first time we met, and then over time we've worked together at the Be the Change campaign. That was way before we even got together, and then after that, to which our agenda at the time was, the rule of Robert Mugabe.
Yes.
As soon as that ended, we kind of like, okay, let's see what that comes with. And we then got together after that, right? And then we started a family together. Wow. But because we had already had so many encounters of working together, post our marriage, we were able to build a business together. So our first business together was Zoodies, believe it or not. Oh, okay. Yeah, so it was Zimbabwean hoodies that would like produce and then sell off. This was also at the height of like the election season of 2018, right? Okay. Yeah, so that was the first business that we built together. It was mainly the idea of our son Shingai. Okay. It was his brainchild. Oh, nice. Then we helped him to like operationalize that. But that was the first time we were working together. And then after that, Fresh in a Box and. So we first met by working together before we're actually a couple. So that dynamic of working together was always was smooth sailing.
Okay. I think that's very interesting.
Smoothish.
Yeah, smooth. Yeah, okay, you can go ahead.
No. That's all I wanted to say. No, look, our love story does have two sides to it, right? Because she didn't know that we're dating for as long as I thought we were.
Situationship much.
So yeah, it culminated, I guess, in a great working relationship. When I first met Noma, she was very young. Still a user student at the time, doing mathematics and so forth.
Oh wow!
The allure was this very systematic and logical brain that she had, which was a great sort of opposite to more my creative passion brain, right? Yeah. Even when we're doing like the Mahere campaign in Mount Pleasant and stuff, she was such a valuable asset in making sure that all our great, crazy ideas were systemized in such a way that they could actually be executed. So she was a wonderful partner in that sense, even before we started dating. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I think I like that because most times we start with love, right? And then circumstances sort of force us or cause us to evolve into becoming partners. What I like about this is that you actually had time to understand each other's strengths outside of the relationship, romance, being married, being husband and wife dynamic, which I think most couples actually come into first start with that.
Correct.
And
Well, see, I'm old school, right?
Yeah.
So I come from a different generation, right? I'm a Gen X. So generally speaking, I think our generation was more like that in the sense that we're wired in the sense that you first look for compatibility, look for common strengths, look at the people, etc., right? I guess I know what's happening now is that I love you happens on WhatsApp immediately, and then you try and. But I think it's a good clash of generations between a millennial and X
and a Gen X.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we do have a 15-year
14.
Oh, really?
14 and a bit.
Oh, that's very interesting. But I think maybe that gap actually helps to like sort of yin and yang it. Right?
Absolutely. Yeah. There's definitely strengths that Noma brings to the table, which she brings a lot of the youthful thoughts and passions and executions, right? Whereas with my age, a lot of my peers are now, very high up in industry, and so a lot of them are CEOs and stuff, right? So that comes with a certain level of wisdom from growth.
Yeah.
But sometimes having the young, passionate, dynamic energy, and also sometimes having maybe the older energy, it helps us a lot as we move forward. It keeps me younger as well. It keeps me more up to date, and also makes us slightly more mature, I hope.
It does.
Okay, so I think the most common known brand was like Fresh in a Box. And it was so interesting bringing the agriculture and tech together, the efficiency, and something that really hadn't actually been done here in Zim. Maybe you can walk us through what that was like, and even your couple journey, like how you conceptualized it together.
Yeah, because
okay, so she woke up and we started the business, but that's what happens sort of a lot of the times, right?
Yeah. Fire starter.
So it's just like we're really struggling to sell tomatoes in our little greenhouse project because at Petco they told us you're gonna die of money when you're this thing, right? And what we did do was we had to follow the instructions well enough, and that this thing was so prolific, right? And so now you have 300 kgs of tomatoes every day, and you just don't know what to do with them. So just going on Twitter and offering people like, look, guys, who wants tomatoes? I'll bring them to your house. That's how it sort of started. And through pure serendipity, other guys were also on Twitter like, yeah, dude, I got lettuces that are growing the heck. I need to get rid of them. Dennis, I remember he was working at Tel One. He was like, I got baby marrows, which are now courgettes, and father marrows. Can you take those? So the first lot of boxes was actually purely mistake of me just telling other guys that, damn, I started this project and I can't ship the stuff. And other farmers were sort of saying, look, we're in the same position. She woke up one day, literally 10 days after giving birth to our daughter, Danai.
Wow.
And it's like, what have you done? I'm like, oh no, so we've started this business, right?
It's gonna work out.
It's gonna work out great, don't worry, right? All these people are sending us eco cash, they haven't even seen the produce, right? So it turns out this cash is arriving, and I was like, cool, now we have to pack them. And where we're going to pack them. So this is before we had the name or anything.
Wow.
The name actually came from people saying, what's the name of your company? And like, it's Fresh in a Box.
Because we were packing in a box.
Packing in a box, like totally lazy.
Literally, it's Fresh in a Box. Yeah.
And so it sort of happened out of a garage. That's how it started. I mean, developing all the way to the fresh farm. It was it was really by, like I said, mistake, trying to sell our produce and trying to make a living in farming, because weirdly enough, she's the passionate farmer in the family. But
I had finished the farming part.
And now it now needed something else. And we can only make so much pasta sauce, right? And soup, right? So and I love branding, and I've been working with retail and in marketing for ages. So that didn't feel difficult to say, look, let's take this brand, let's make it something, let's push it. Now I sort of end there, and I think, thank God she operationally then was not able to, okay, guys, we need a process flow, we need this, we need to hire a GM, we need to get scales. I mean, we didn't even start with scales. We used to just eyeball it.
It was called the Delight the Customer box.
Just throw everything in there.
4 tomatoes is a kg. I don't know.
No, we were not even thinking like
kgs,
that.
Right?
It was like, does the box
looks
amazing? Like, is the client going to look at it and goes, wow.
That was the only thing, right? I'm a marketing guy.
That's him. So
but then now we can't. The money doesn't make sense if you're just trying to wow people and you don't know what's the cost centers. And so that's where she really jumped in.
You know what I love just hearing your story is to see like I don't know you very well, but I can actually see like the strengths, like the different, like you're saying, the systematic thinking and the creative. And I think generally in any business, whether you're married or you're not married, those are good partnerships to have, right? And I was sharing with Kuda before, and I was saying, well, I'm a bit scatterbrain, right? Like my mind likes to.
You're more like me. We'll be terrible in business.
I love that. Yeah, exactly. We'd be terrible business partners.
To be vibes.
Yeah, exactly.
We strongly believe in the franchise player model in everything that we do, right? So who's the franchise player at a particular moment? Like there's a time for Ronaldo, there's a time for the defenders, there's a time for so each season has a franchise player, and we genuinely defer a lot to that feeling, because it's like, look, you've started another business, dog. What you know? And I'll step out the way.
He just like wake up and he's like,
yeah, absolutely.
He's a fire starter. Like we always make the joke. I think it was from Ice Age, is it? Where like there's that guy, he just finds fire and then it goes ba 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 ba. Like he really knows how to start great ideas, and like they make sense. But with processes and systems, it's not as fast as starting the fire. It's like nurturing it. Yes. Are we making it a bonfire, or are we just trying to boil water for a tea, or we cooking beans? There's different types of fires that you'd have to do. So the speed at which they start and the speed at which we grow, some will then fall over.
Oh, I really love that. Your chemistry is actually, it's so, you can actually see it.
Well, she's the genius of the family. It helps.
Yeah. You can actually see the chemistry and the blend. So what's been like the highlight of working with your wife? What do you like about working with her?
I mean, look, my wife is super smart, right? And I think it's fun to wake up.
Very few men will actually say that, even if the wife is super smart. But so kudos to you for saying it.
Oh, thank you. But then generally it's true. I mean, my wife is super smart. It's fun to wake up with my wife every day and be able to ideate, and no idea is a stupid idea. Someone who can sort of bring me into line and say, look, how would we make that work? I mean, how many people would we need on it? Or, what's the EBITDA? I don't know, right? So these are. So the one thing I love about my wife is that she genuinely knows how to control the fires I can start. So I genuinely don't feel afraid to be fully expressive and start stuff and explore stuff. As a youngster, I was a musician. I love playing instruments. I love creating beats and stuff like that. If we had a Noma type character, maybe we would have been superstars. But we were just very good
at manage
the band, right? But we're just very great at making the music and the vibes and whatever. So having someone who genuinely understands, doesn't sort of douse the creativity in me. It really is really great. I feel very empowered to be myself. And love seeing her at work, making things come to life. A lot of the businesses in the group, I mean, it really is a testament of my wife's ability to make things work. A lot of them shouldn't, because I'm a Mseamwa, and by definition, Mseamwa businesses, I like cool things, I like flashy stuff, but having someone who can manage that is really great.
That's really awesome. Mseamwa sekuru. I really love that. And I think what you said is, I think it's so important, right? I think the worst thing is being with someone who, like you say, douses the energy. Yeah. You're coming to create, you have ambition, you have this thing, you've got this fire, like the zeal, like ideas kind of burn inside of you, right? Yeah. Usually when an idea comes, it literally feels like a fire, like, oh, I love Eureka. It. Exactly. And I think the worst thing is being with someone who will say, So I think that's amazing, because then
it's not all the time. Sometimes it does feel like dowsing because it's.
But we have this whole love my idea
for 5 minutes.
For 5 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah. Which has really helped in our communication.
Oh wow!
So no matter how crazy it is, right? You pitch your idea and for 5 minutes, love it, and let's see how we can develop it. Then you can come in with a. But
so it's not always like, oh great, let's do that, great. It's like you have to like call for it, like just you're like, okay, let's hear it, and you write. I think my favorite thing of working with him is that like you can ride through the waves of creativity. So I'm not the most creative person that you've ever met. I mean, the best drawing I can do is like a stick man. He opens up like worlds to that's actually possible. You know, like that's very interesting. I mean, I remember with Fresh in a Box, it's like, how are you selling these vegetables again? It's like, on the internet. I'm like, I don't know if that works.
It was such a novel idea.
So at the time, it was, in our world, it wasn't called e-commerce. I mean, even Amazon was still about books, right? They had started moving into other products, right? But it was still so, okay, you see, Amazon doesn't sell things that are perishable. Whole Foods came after Fresh in a Box, right? So you're like, okay, so how are we playing that? And being able to ride the wave with them, like, no, don't worry. It's like, it's a zero-sum game at the end of the day. It comes in and it goes out. We're not keeping any stock. And you're like, what? There's nothing in retail that sells, that says that, right? And he's worked in retail before. You're like, okay, how would that work? It's like, no cold rooms. So farmers come in the morning, because we now have a group of them. They drop off and then pack it and go out, right? To him, it's done. And it's not like, okay, so what's the math here? I have to make sure that all of my orders are done by a certain time, because you then have to wake up early and be like to all the farmers, I just need 100 heads of broccoli. Or today I need 200. And that uncertainty at times is really like, not great for a farmer, because they're like, okay, so do I plant 1,000? Do I plant 10,000? Do I plant 300? But that was the, you know, the logic. But it's always like, farms, like, who knew that you could have veggies on demand and still remain with the warehouse that's got nothing in it?
With zero stock.
Really
we never even had like the boxes, because they'll come in the morning, pack. I think the most that we had was like sellotape.
Wow.
The tape was the one that would remain behind. Everything else is like, we'll start again tomorrow. Let's start 4:30. We're on. By 9-10 a.m., we're done.
And part of our process flow was getting partner drivers, and which was really brilliant, I think, because, you know, leveraging into Windy app and leveraging into some of the Via guys who were chilling during, like after school run, they were doing nothing, right? And just putting them on a partner app and getting them to really come in, grab and just go. Getting guys who live in particular areas, you know, guys in Chitunguza to specialize in the areas, because some of these places were not even geotagged, right? So knowing what you said, like, you know, so knowing that, okay, let's quickly pull in drivers from particular areas meant that we were really strong in places like Budiri Road, Chitunguza, and so on and so forth, right? So that helped us span. So that kind of being able to take a crazy idea and then maybe put the process flow in place. So who's doing procurement, who's doing QC, who's doing packing, how are we doing warehouse, how are we keeping things integrous? Once the process flow was done, it didn't take us maybe more than a month before we now had meat and loads of other things, because the same sort of process flow plugged in.
And I think that's the power of having systems and processes, that ultimately you can actually end up plugging in anything. As long as it works. So we'll be right back. We're going to be unpacking so much more with Kuda and Noma. And we're back with Kuda and Noma, and we're unpacking the cross-section of love and business in family businesses. So we heard about the genesis, the beginning, the love story. And like I said, I actually love your chemistry, because it's genuine. It's actually real. I can tell that you guys are friends. You've got a good, you know, you can sit with couples and you're like, this is sus.
It's a little sus.
Yeah, it's a little sus. But you guys actually have like genuine friendship, and it's really cool. It is. That's really nice, and it's really shining through. So, you know, friends fight. So yeah, I mean, I was sharing with Norma so I'm divorced, and I used to work with my husband, and I always used to struggle with this like submissive wife, I think, because you're coming from church and then disagreeing as a partner. Like you're like, I think that doesn't work for me, right? Wearing the two hats, because sometimes like your wife view can be a little different from like when you're a business partner. So yeah, maybe start with Norma. Like what is, I mean, actually that's a question targeted at you. Have you found that resonates even from an African perspective? Because, you know, we've got the cultural context around us for our marriages and partnerships and things like that. Do you ever find that there's a clash, or how do you navigate that space?
To be honest, we do disagree.
Okay.
But I think one of our biggest strengths is that we know how to communicate.
Okay.
So there is no respect lost in expressing an idea or a differing view about anything. So there's never a time where you step out of your being and start acting out of character. And if you were, the other person would then let you know, Kuda will let you know, say, hey, you're a bit out of character. Are you okay? Because it's like, it's not even an are you okay in a condescending manner, but is this really about what we are discussing, or it's got something else to do with other things that are not about what we're discussing. So I think that's our biggest strength. And also because of how we were friends before we got married, we've always been in scenarios where differing ideas come about. And the biggest thing that we use that let the best logic rule.
Okay.
Right? If you have superior logic, it must rule. And your agenda, even in conversation or in conflict, is to show that my idea is superior. And that idea really speaks to what's the desired outcome, which is our biggest rule, right? Because if the desired outcome is something that we agree on, what we are differing on is the path to the desired outcome and not necessarily changing the outcome in itself. So that's always been a...
And are you willing to die on this particular hill?
on this particular hill.
So there's many disagreements where I self-reflect and say, am I willing to die on this particular hill? Because if the desired outcome is therefore the same, sometimes it doesn't matter. We are raised as men sometimes to be overly braggadocious and the whole baboemusha nonsense, which I don't believe works. Yeah, the morpho vibes. Which I don't believe it takes us.
Protocol.
Yeah, I don't think it takes us very far as a civilization, especially when good ideas start being subverted for genitalia, right? And I think I have to credit my dad that, robust communications. I mean, she has great relations with my parents. Robust communications with my mom never led to anything sort of abusive, and there was no this baba musha nonsense that sort of starts to prevail where bad ideas start to now take over good. So generally speaking, if you're able to sometimes step back, look at the franchise player in that particular situation. So there's very, very, very few times that I'll get involved in particular operations and stuff, because I know that I need Noma to be able to succeed or fail on her own merits, not because I jumped in and tried to sort of overrun something. Now look, not to say that our home does not believe in gender roles. That's not true, right? We still have a very traditional sort of setup in our home, but good ideas, great ideas are always going to prevail over masculinity versus femininity or anything of that name. So we've never had that situation, to be honest. And I think fortunately as well, there's been a great way of compartmentalizing. I mean, I've done big doodles in the past, in our personal life, which I don't think have affected our business life. Because I think the desired outcome is this business going to be successful? Or am I going to be mad that I didn't take out the trash?
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
I think, well, to me, it sounds like there's a lot of self-awareness at a individual level, and then...
To be honest, you know what? I'm going to cut you off. You mentioned that you're divorced. I have the pleasure also of being divorced.
Okay.
And there's a lot of lessons that you learn when you go through that, because the whatever over romanticizations of what a divorce is, you can quickly reflect on some of the really terrible decisions and some of the terrible things that happened that led to a breakup of years of a relationship. I'm so grateful for that divorce, because it's taught me better communication. I'm far less opinionated. I'm far less. I'm not going to die on many hills. I'm happy for the happy wife, happy life mantra nowadays. Because I genuinely think that sometimes as women would generally think not just about themselves, they'll normally think about you, they'll normally think about the children and so on and so forth. And sometimes we don't have that necessary nurturing gift. So sometimes defer to the logic that, you know what, she wouldn't be doing this if she wasn't thinking about the bigger picture.
I like your answers. Number one, the first thing that I've taken from it is what's the bigger picture? I think that sometimes as couples, we don't often think about, even as business partners, right? because the bigger picture speaks to aligned vision and purpose. Like, where are we going? And sometimes, even when you are not married, but you're in a partnership, sometimes partnerships can fail because you haven't quite agreed and aligned on what is actually our bigger picture. We want to grow this business. So, okay, what's our road map to market? Are we agreeing? Well, maybe if we can take a left or right, but are we still going to get to where we want to go?
Yeah.
Right. So I think that's really important. You said something that I think, if we have couples or people working together, even whether it's a sibling partnership, right, or any form of partnership, any business, what's the bigger picture?
Right.
And really,
And who's the franchise player?
Yeah.
In that particular
so
issue.
maybe unpack that a little bit, like for
The franchise player.
what the franchise. Because Noma mentioned it earlier before we started filming, and I was like, okay, yeah, like let's dig deeper into. I like the framework because it seems to be working for you guys.
So for example, there's like I'm a heart guy and I'm a creative guy and I like stuff. So chances are, normally say I don't like the color on the poster, right? Now, if I like the color on the poster, in that particular space, I'm the franchise player.
Okay.
So allow me to win or fail on our merit.
Okay.
Right? Particular operation that's happening on the farm, with crop spraying, and I don't like Roundup. It's cancerous. I read it on TikTok or whatever, right? And at the end of the day, she's like, dog, like, DBM is gonna kill us, right? And that's that. She's particularly
how much you're not actually power from Roundup to DBM, like separate thing, herbicide.
Exactly, right? Yeah. So I'm saying, she's the franchise player, and any input I'm giving at this point can be detrimental to the bigger goal.
It's advisory.
Absolutely. And sometimes that advice is it worth taking or is not taking. And I think as the franchise player in that particular position, I genuinely try and stay out of things I don't know. I don't choose the color of the curtains in the house. I don't care what the pots look like, if they're ceramic or if they're chrome. There's certain things I stay out of. And, our household uses Mac because that's my particular, you know what I mean? Yeah. So that's where we sort of, we win with that.
I think that's really important. Because when you distill what you've just said, it really also goes down to like the roles, right? Being so clear on who's who, and not necessarily from a job description perspective, but like you said, that where Norma's coming from, that she's probably going to make decisions that are good for the kids, that are because she's nurturing, so you can plug into her role sort of as a mother, right? And it could filter through into the business sense that she probably wouldn't make a decision that will
harm the business.
Yeah. Harm the business and ultimately the kids and their welfare and their ability to eat and basically, you know what I mean? That it all cascades. And like you're saying, that she'll say, well, maybe I don't like the color on the poster, but he's the creative.
Yeah. I mean, also with the franchise player model, what she's taught, it's like building the trust muscle, right? Because I know that there's certain things that Kuda can take care of excellently. I make up space to learn more about the things that I need to be excellent at. Okay. So you can be a jack of all trades, but there are also some things like, genuinely, do I really want to know how the marketing of the business will go? Yeah, overview, right? But I don't want to know what the designer is doing, or I'd like to know if the ad is working efficiently versus the money that I have to output from finance. Yeah. Like, are we getting a return on investment? And that's usually a simple number. It's not details. Have you put it landscape or portrait or whatever? So it's not in that space. But it also builds that muscle of trust that I know he's got it, got it, right? And if I say I got it, he doesn't need to say it twice. He knows that, she's got it.
You trust that trust muscle. Just a question. You seem so like you understand each other, right? Did you sit down and unpack it, like to say, okay, we're putting in these frameworks? Like sometimes you go for counseling and they sort of say, speak like this, where they train you to communicate. Is it something that you intentionally built? Is it something that's organic? Because sometimes, people have organic ways of communicating. Is it something that you said, you know what? We actually need to really focus on learning to communicate. Hence, okay, let's implement this franchise player thing. Like, was it something that you were so intentional about, or was it just natural?
The intentionality, but I think it's more serendipity.
Yeah.
I genuinely, I don't think we've ever had to sit down and discuss stuff like this.
But we also talk a lot.
We talk a span, like a span.
I can tell.
So it could have come up in one of the conversations, and then there's no really, was it organic? But it was also inspired by something, and
also things like our yearly AGMs, and then our sort of monthly family meetings, which are like board meetings in a sense, where it is really, where is our life going? What's up with the girls? What are we doing with this? Those really, really help us on a sort of yearly basis, monthly basis. Our check-ins, our very, deliberate time to sometimes, the dopamine hit phones are away, and it's just, let's go to Mtara and hang out, and let's see where we're going. Are we dropping this? Are we moving this? That really helps. And I think talking is really, just being great communicators has helped me a lot. Now, as you get older, you get less and less friends. Believe it or not,
it's very true.
I'm 40-something, and I don't want to hang out. I don't want to watch football. I don't want to go out a span. So me, it depends on the time is I'm hanging out with my wife or playing with my kids or building some new app or whatever. That's more what I do a span of. So a lot of my interactions.
She ends up being your friend.
Yeah, my wife is more my friend, and I love my alone time. So when she's with her friends, great times too, right? So a lot of alone time, and a lot of time with her is great.
Okay. I mean, okay, so you breezed through something that's probably not a general standard, right? I don't know how many people have family meetings and yearly AGMs. So this is the intentionality in terms of the frameworks that I'm talking about.
And that's her. It's got nothing to do with me. I would never have done it.
Because, I mean, if we were to poll 10 families, right? Even high net worth, high achieving families, said, do you guys have family meetings? I mean, because we work in the advisory space, it's actually something that we institute. It's part of the governance to say, well, we want to encourage you to start doing family meetings. And these family meetings shouldn't be too intense. It's just teaching you guys to talk.
Yeah.
Right? How did you start doing family meetings? Are the kids involved? Is it just the two of you? We want to know. Tell us about the family meetings, the AGMs, because it's interesting. Because I can tell that you've got a great communication framework. And I'm like, how did they develop this?
So the yearly AGM is more of just us.
Okay.
Right. And then our girls are still young. So it's like 6 and 4. And it's just once a week where we check in. How are you doing? What are you working on? What new thing are you creating? Value creation. What did you create? What did you do that changed the way you do certain things? That's probably as far as we go with our kids. But it's mostly us two for now.
Okay.
Yeah. But then the fact that it's set and it's like, okay, so on the last Friday or on the last Saturday of the month, you and I are going to have the meeting. Where were we with this and where are we now? Where did we fail? Where did we win? Did we do great on that? Oh, shit, I didn't think that was going to work out so well. Is it something that we intentionally did? Can we look back on it? That allows us to also say, okay, can this be systemized? Or is it something is there a method to the madness? And then can we sift out the method and say, can we repeat again? Which is pretty much what has made our businesses have. So we have this idea framework where we iterate, delegate, eliminate, and automate, right? In that order. And so based on those things, we practice it even in when we discuss whether it's the business or the family. Right now we're building and we're like, okay, what do we need to do more of? Okay, we went away from the business for a week. Did it fall apart? No. Did it fall apart? Yes. What fell apart? So clearly there's no system working there. Let's implement that system. Let's test it out. We're away for a day. Did it fall apart again? No. Then you start to, iterate on that. But that's...
Yeah, I mean, the idea principle has been our big one in our marriage, to be honest. Like I said, iterate, delegate, eliminate, and automate. That really keeps our businesses pumping. And like the AGMs don't need to be something stuffy. I mean, it's fun. We go to Mozambique and chill, eat prawns or something, and you take minutes and make sure that we can... action them, something that you can review next time and stuff. Something that I never used to do in my life. I mean, my wife is the notes and calendar type person, but I found that structure very beneficial to my more ADHD brain, right? So simple things, are we attacking the top 3 things in the day? Did you manage to achieve your goals and the checking ins and stuff? And when you talk about the kids, the family devotions time, which my kids call Angas Baka.
Well, that's more from Gogo and Papa.
Papa, yeah, Angas Baka. So during that time, it's like it's more that the sacrosanct time that cannot be substituted. We do get a lot of time to check in with the kids and stuff, and stuff like teaching them gigs and stuff like that, and how they earn their way and create value. That's been helpful. Very young, but we saw it quite beneficial with my older kids as well from a previous marriage. Yeah.
Okay, and that's so interesting. You touched on that. That's a big topic, like blending families.
Correct.
Especially in this space, we always encounter people in very unique situations, because I think when you're looking at family business advisory, no family is the same.
Correct.
Right? Lots of similarities, but you're never completely the same. And so it's always like understanding each dynamic.
Right.
Yeah, how people, what does that look like? I've co-parented before, so it's always it's interesting because you're different people with different values, building one person. It's like there could be 4 of you now, or inputting, and you're trying to make that work. So what's that journey been like for you guys? Or maybe for Noma?
Yeah. Oh, okay, so he's said that he's divorced. I'm a child of divorced parents.
Yeah.
So I think in that equation, when we got together, I think we had a lot of that back and forth of, I think we're even self-therapizing at that point. But I think one thing that I was very intentional about was to lead with respect. So I don't go around saying, oh, I've mothered my stepchildren or whatever. There's really nothing like that. But there's just human to human mutual respect and giving out the space. And we've always met each other where we need to meet each other. And I think that has worked very well in terms of like blending the family. I may be a little pedantic about Sunday lunch at home. Like, you guys have to come. And, there's that whole family dynamic. But the more they've grown and they've left the country, you find that there's better relationships between them and their younger siblings. Sometimes you just don't even know. It's like, oh yeah, I spoke to Tendo, this and that. And you're like, oh, okay, cool. Yeah. But then outside of building the human beings, I don't know if I've played like a bigger role in that. What would you say?
I mean, look, we're very fortunate, eh? My wife's very loving. They got on very well with the older kids, and we, touch wood. I've not had any sort of major upsets. Even in interactions with my ex-wife, there was a big sort of hoopla about, I almost died of COVID, right? And I think a couple of crazy things had to happen at that time. There had to be a lot of collaboration between my wife and my ex-wife, and there's children to deal with and stuff like that. And similarly, again, if I'm going to take it back to the business, because I've talked about this COVID thing, me having all the passwords on my phone and the access to the PayPal and the Stripes and whatever else, and sometimes not knowing how he does this. When I came out of hospital after a month in a coma, we quickly showed us that, look, nothing can be centralized. The business cannot be a personality thing. A lot of the deals we had with Coco and AMP and stuff were like, Kuda's cool with the guys there and so on and so forth. And we quickly had to figure out that, look, this business cannot survive with you being the,
it wasn't a begotten son business.
It wasn't a begotten son business, right? But all of a sudden, it's like, okay, we just had great sales over Christmas. People are locked down. Kuda, I think, is very sick. We've taken a bunch of meat and stuff on credit. People start worrying, the business dying. He must give us our money now.
And you know what? I love this example. This is actually great because, I was saying to you, most family businesses everybody lifts up their head in a crisis. Nobody, very rarely do you find families that plan. Like, it's always, now
what?
Now what? And I think it's so amazing that you actually had an opportunity to like sort of stress test your life, right?
No, God showed us, right? We had to we had to come out of that. I mean, still with the matter of everything, the one thing I said to him is like, look, everything needs to change, right? This cannot be a passion Kuda driven project or anything, right? It has to. It gave me a lot of impetus to start really trying to elevate my wife as well. Because sometimes these are unsung heroes and come out and be seen as they be who you are. You know, we subsequently she got the female farmer of the year and all these kind of cool things. And it's just so good. Sometimes I was overshadowing maybe in a sense, and also. We systematically, I mean, even from there, went to the States and came back, went to South Africa for a bit. And everything we're doing in all that time was like, how do we make sure that if any of us dies, nothing changes, right? Not structure, not anything like the
contract.
Like, you know, we have to put things in trust. We have to do this and that. And that was a really great journey, which is greatly liberating now because I feel like I don't feel the pressure so much of being the guy and trying to run it, because now everything is in such a is getting in such a nice place that we're not as necessary in the equation as we used to be, which is great.
That's really awesome. And I think when it comes to founders, I believe that businesses are kind of like children. You give birth to them and then you nurture them, and they're also like a part of you because they reflect your personality, they reflect your creative, they reflect a lot of things about you. And it's, some moms are like helicopter moms, hovering and hovering and hovering, and some moms are like, oh, let him play, I don't wanna, don't worry, you'll get up. So we parent differently. We treat our children differently. It's kind of the same thing with the business. And what I like about, what happened with you and the COVID thing is that it sort of forced you into systems and continuity.
Absolutely,
right?
yeah.
Because you actually had like a real...
Oh, they were planning my funeral, right? When the doctors say you have 13% chance of living, your organ failure. It's so sad to see you come out there, right? And I have lost weight and I got muscle atrophy. And I look at my wife, she says, we planned your funeral. Like me and your dad we had to now figure out how, because you have so many people who wanted to come, but then it was the COVID time, shutdown. And so it was like real wake up call, like, dude, we can't run like this, right? It had to change. And I think that was a terrible blessing in disguise, believe it or not.
I mean, that's such a profound thing that I don't think, it rarely happens to most people.
Yeah.
So, it's a bit of a deviation, but we can't let it go. What was that like? So like thinking about it, that you were like an inch
from death,
from death. And then you're coming back, and do you have like a different view of life now?
No, of course. Yeah. The person who goes in a coma or comes out is very different, right? Okay. Even us now, like sort of building our rural home and stuff, it's sort of a death of ego, right? My one of the tweets I put out was I now own nothing, and it was such a great feeling to just let go of all material things. Whatever. I don't need to own an iPhone. I can use one from work. I don't need to own a car. I can use one from work, right? Yeah. I have access to a place to live, and put things in trust and just get rid of stuff, because the most important things, keep the most important things, the most important things, right? Yeah. And it's more about family now, more about building, the legacy, continuing where my father left off, where his father left off. And so that's the different person that comes out. And I think what came out for my wife, if I just as an observer, was a far stronger human being. Yeah. Right? She kept the ship afloat regardless of where I was at the time. Now imagine you're trying to run a business. The government is shut down again, so again your business is at the top of it. It's like we have to be at the top of our game because we have thousands of people who need our service, and your husband is also dying in the hospital at the same time, right? So there's this rude test of
I was even pregnant at that time.
I'm pregnant with Minana,
yeah, I was pregnant at that time.
So it was. I came out and I saw a much more capable, much stronger person, and I was very happy to say, you know what, the world is in good hands. I can really take a step back and do other things that I find passionate, which is why I end up buggering off to do like Africa AI and just cool stuff, because with the team there, and because I knew that everything is
in order,
under control. Yeah.
Thank you.
And Noma, what was that like for you? That experience, just being pregnant, running a business is stressful. That was a lot going on.
It was. Yeah. You know what? It was like, I think, like you said, it was a testing time. Like, how are you going to come out of it. And I think the very fact that I'm more of a logical person, I had a moment to pack feelings and then go with the plan. But outside of that, we never prepared for death.
Yeah.
We had the conversation of the divorce, right? Because one of our mentors said, you guys need to discuss the divorce before the marriage, right? And this was even for the business and not technically our marriage, right? And so we always had like plans where you are still alive and I'm still alive. So how are we playing it? It was never, you're not here. How am I playing it? And I think learning to download ourselves and put ourselves into a system and say, how could I think this through, or what would be the, so even sometimes when you make a decision and it's not there to help you make the decision, when you come back and you're giving feedback, it's like, yeah, okay. It's not why would you do that? It's okay, the thought process was 1, 2, 3. And I thought, and it's like, oh, okay, fair enough. I would have done the same thing. Then we move on. So those were my bigger lessons of having to come out more, but also learning how to systemize even the person so that you know them, but if you had to tell the next person who they were, how would you tell that story? And I think that's what came out of that.
That's really awesome. And I'm really loving this discussion. You said something which was actually one of my questions, so we'll just jump into it. Divorce. I think now, Kuda and I are fellow divorcees. It's when I think about even getting remarried and I think about business, it's because you've been through it, you're like, how would you put that together from a continuity perspective, like a business, right? You've started something. A business it's a living, breathing thing. Wow. It's employing people. Yeah. It's offering a service, right? There are people benefiting from it from different stakeholder perspectives. So it's not just about us at our home. It's also about the ecosystem around us. So if we have a relationship failure, what does that look like for this thing that we've built? And it's so interesting that you actually had that conversation. So what did that look like for you?
So we're not going to stop being business partners.
Okay, that's wonderful.
I guess that'd be the different thing. But our conversation is
nothing should change.
We are no longer married, but we have a partnership. So most of what we do is governed by a series of agreements. We can change our minds, but that has to go back to the agreement. Why are we changing it? Okay, what are we changing it to? And then how does that look like for every other agreement that's in that package, right? Okay. So the only agreement, pretty much what divorce would produce in this case, is because there's a broken agreement before. So what's the new agreement? The new agreement is that you and I are no longer legally married. We're still business partners.
And we are married in commune of property. Let's be honest, right? So we are.
So that's
that
in
helps.
the middle. But see,
nothing should change. Even if I decide, like I did some years ago, just step away for a bit and just recoup. Nothing in the business should generally change. Okay. There are things that Kuda is a way of softering suppliers and whatever. And I guess maybe that, like I said, she's really stepped up into her own. And there's a lot. My wife suffers from a lot of imposter syndrome, right? No matter how great you tell her she is, she doesn't believe it. And she doesn't have the Dunning-Kruger effect someone like me has. Now, people who know us bad and we're very smart start to know how much they don't know. Yeah. And there's people like me who just don't think there's anything I don't know. So, so it's actually starting to encourage some of that Dunning-Kruger effect in her and say, you know what, you are who they say you are. You have to go out there, right? And so I'm hoping that listen, God forbid anything happens in that regard, but nothing should change. Yeah. Despite who moves on, decides to leave, whatever. Nothing as far as the business is concerned should change. Now, this is utopia. I know that could be totally different.
But he stays with the kids, which is the biggest thing we have. So
it's interesting.
I didn't.
It's in the agreement.
That's one of her conditions.
Oh, wow. That's very interesting. Well, I actually love that you even had that conversation, because I'm sure
with men, out of sight, out of mind, eh?
Yeah,
if you take them out of our care, we will.
So true.
You will fight with me for silly things. Yes. But if they're there, they'll have pizza every day.
Yeah. Dad's always so much fun.
Happy to be McDonald's mom.
I actually just love the fact that you even had that conversation. I think many people be afraid. It's like, oh, we're planning. It's like kind of like a prenup, right? I was actually reading something that says couples that have prenups actually do better.
Correct.
Because I think you're forced into a hard conversation that many people, we're afraid to go deep. We're afraid to like rattle, shake the boat. And so we want to keep pretending like we talk on the surface. But I think the thing about marriage is no matter what happens, you're going to have to go deep.
Yeah.
Right? Like you can't escape. When you're dating, you're kind of like, oh, we can't have that conversation. Then you're like, no, we really should have had that conversation. Because, with marriage, there's, like you said, you almost died.
Yeah.
No,
there's no running away from life and its depth and the things that happen and being able to actually tackle tough conversations. So, that's such a great takeaway.
Yeah. I remember I'm from a different generation.
Yeah.
I've married the two women I've dated. I don't think any of these young men can say that, right? A totally different generation. So, it is important that to understand that we are living in very new times. Dating is different, communication is different, and so forth. And there is some wisdom in some of our old ways of, when you wrote an angry letter, you still had to go to the post office and post it, and you still had to wait 4 days for someone to receive it, right? And did you really feel that person? Would you still feel the same way
by the time the
letter arrives, right? There's still there's a shotgunny nature to the new ways of just you're pissed and you like, what's up, and you say something angry and so forth. Some of these things you can't take back.
Yeah, it's true.
So honestly speaking, communicating some of the hard stuff is important. Think, like I said, think of every message you're about to send on the phone. Just think it like an old school letter. And are you still feeling the same way when you walk to the post office in my brain? When you put it in that red yellow box, are you still feeling the same way 2 days later when when the postman is going there? And are you going to be proud of yourself when that person receives that letter? So those kind of things are very important. I think that's, I guess, from my generation to yours, guys.
Which proliferates into our business, essentially. You may be upset about something. I think I'm learning. That's my biggest lesson when it comes. I wasn't best at HR. I'm a straight shooter. Sometimes my tone is not the best, and But the point is, I'm trying to get something done. And so having to learn that, getting things done is important, but can you slow it down in terms of how you execute to the point where you can still get your desired outcome of getting things done without having to, untangle everything else? I
told my wife, not every
thing is a nail
that needs a hammer, right? I always say, open up your toolbox and find the variety. But sometimes you need sticky stuff. Sometimes you need sellotape, right? It's not always a hammer and a nail. And like I said, as we play off each other a lot, like I said, I'm the heart guy and she's the mind guy, right? So I sometimes realize that speaking to staff in a particular way gets a far better result. May not be as fast, but a better result. And that's sometimes the desired outcome. Whereas my wife is far more crack the whip, which sometimes gets a quicker result, but not necessarily the better result. So that's we play on that.
Wow,
Jesus, we're jumping around a lot. We're segueing a bunch. I don't even think we've answered any of your questions, have we?
No. Okay. Like I said, it's the evolution of the conversation I've really loved. It's very organic and it's very real. And I think that's the core of what this episode, because being married it's very interesting. And like we're talking about the depth, open conversations, truths, facing hard things, building a business together. There's a lot that comes with it, and I think you're doing great.
Thank you.
So we'll be right back, and we're going to be unpacking something very interesting in the next segment. We're going to be looking at succession planning, legacy, children, and what they think the future holds and what that looks like for them. And we're back, and we're going to be talking about the big term in family business, which is succession planning. And I personally hate the term, actually, because I believe it seems so final. I like the word continuity, because whether it's a family or a business, you need to keep going. And we need to talk about what continuity looks like from a family perspective and what continuity looks like from a business perspective, and how do you marry the two systems. So yeah, we're going to, what I like is you guys are young founders. You know, as I've started growing in this advisory field, I tend to meet a lot of old founders. A lot of founders that I've met with are in the 60 plus range. A lot of times there's conflict, a lot of it. There's conflict because they're realizing they built something, they're reaching the end, they're tired. They don't want to leave it to someone else who's not their family. They're trust issues, right? You want to build something and leave to a non-family. You build something without your family being involved, and you're now trying to, 30, 40 years later,
Get them in.
Get everybody in and get everybody to align to the vision. And you're trying to do something that should have probably taken 20, 30 years to actually do, which is aligned vision, purpose, values. Where are we going, guys? Who are we as a people? What does the future look like? And by the time you get to the future, you've sort of been walking this journey along as a family, and it helps you to have the continuity from a business perspective and from a family perspective. So, yeah, have you guys, you mentioned that your kids are young. What sort of things do you involve your kids in business, and even the older kids? What sort of entrepreneurial discussions or conversations do you have with your children? Or is it something that you're thinking about?
I'm very fortunate that my older kids are very entrepreneurial in their mindset. Like I said, the first business that I worked with my wife was the Zwoodies brand to support Shingai's business, which was his Zwoodies brand, which is still going in Shin. Zwoodies.com.
Shout out.
Shout out to my boy.
Plug.
And he started that because he wanted to buy his first car at 16, right? And he succeeded, because he'd done some really cool, like, Chibisa and ED hoodies and, played on people's differences and election season, and just sold a bunch, and it was really, really creative of him to design. But the truth of the matter is, I'm not nearly even an expert on succession and how we're going to move things forward. As a nation, we haven't seen even power handed over one person to another in an easy way. In our families, we haven't either. We have no example in Zimbabwe that I know of a Rhodes trust that's existed time infinitum, right? We don't have some of those great examples. Now, we're gonna either fight some of those demons and become some of the first born free issues to see if we can carry some legacies on. But we have to deal with some of the baggage that our fathers had, most of them being children of multiple, polygamous homes, of pillaged wealth of families. In my Musasiwa family, obviously, most will know the Musasiwa buses. One of the biggest brands, 78 Volvos on the road, Mashingonitara, great. Family should have been totally set from that. Again, younger brother to my dad from a different mother, sons, uncles, the lifestyle that came through with it. Guys messed around with a bunch of girls, the conductors, you name it. We actually attribute 90% of the deaths of the Musasiwa men to that particular thingy. And it doesn't even have one bus left. And that's... So this is some of the institutional things that we have to deal with as Africans, especially, that how are we going to pass on some of the stuff that we build. And the old adage that, hard times create strong men create good times create weak men create hard times. We're going to have to break that cycle. I know how hard it has been for my father to even get us, to be suburban kids and the schools he had to send us to. It wasn't easy. Because now, as a parent, I now know how hard it is to come up with the school fees, right? And my wife comes from hard beginnings as well. Knows how hard her mom and dad had to work. She goes to university, coming from Malawi, or already a minority that's already quite subjugated. And we're fighting as hard as we can to say we want to give our kids the best and stuff. But we are also learning very quickly not to overlove our children.
I like that.
More relevance than just what is perceived as best,
right?
Education.
So, do you feed a child a donut because it's lovely and sweet, or do you feed them a carrot because it's healthy? These are the important questions that we're going to have to keep asking ourselves as we go forward. Do they understand how to milk a cow? Do they understand how to mend their own torn jerseys, etc.? Now, this is counterintuitive from the perspective of I want my kids to have the best and eat ice cream all the time and stuff. And we're having to learn ourselves to fight some of these
unbundle
it, right? Because we're gonna have to get them to understand value and value creation. Money doesn't grow on trees, but can grow on trees if you plant them. These are really important lessons. So there's a bunch of things that we're having to now learn. So we are absolutely. I mean, I was saying to the wife, "Geez, this question is a tough one," because we come on these podcasts and answer questions like we know everything, and we don't. Right? We absolutely don't, right? How are we going to make sure that we are not just another statistic? How are we going to make sure that Kuda and Noma have fought and How are we going to make sure, how are we going to... So these are some of the big things that on a day-to-day that we're fighting to
actually have. But also maybe on reflection, I think on the succession plan, I don't think it's a succession plan per se, but it's something that I learned when I joined your family. My father-in-law always says that a good name will take you further, right? And it's something that I believe in our line, that's something that is always instilled, right? That if you mention the name Musasiwa, it should be with honesty, with principle, with, fulfilling something. And we've seen that with dad and mom, they're more pastors. So that their journey was along evangelism, right? Okay. So ours is an enterprise, but there's definitely a lot of things that they have taught us that even in our business space and being in Zimbabwe, there are a lot of things that we've said no to on principle because of the name that we hold, right? And so it may not be in the name, it may not be assets as we know them or in the accounting description, but our assets are the name that we carry, right? So how we then teach our children that, like, yo nonzani urichiera wekupi and stuff like that, and they know that and it should bring pride, but also what does it speak to? Because we don't want to then perpetuate the anachiera, they're the most unreasonable people, when that's not technically what it is, right? It's like, okay, why do you pursue, or why do you have that energy, and where do you channel it? How much value do you create around you, and how does it change your environment or your community? Are you helping the next person? That kind of thing. And I think that is the bigger story of wealth building, where it starts, because you don't start by fighting over assets. You start by not having relationships with each other. You start by not knowing who anatitevako ndani because of whatever dynamics they exist, right? It's something that I think Dad has definitely built in all of us. There's home is home for everybody, regardless of who birthed you. It's home. So you'd find that even in our home, right? Your long lost brother can come like, hey, how are you doing? And it's like, it's a no-brainer. They are home, and so there's always that. And I think from building from there, when you now want to talk about money, I feel like that conversation may be a lot easier for our children. Do we think that they won't mess it up? We're not counting on it. But we think that there's definitely values and systems that we have built that should be able to carry them over. Are we too precious about it being our children that take over the businesses?
No, not really. No. I mean,
capable people must handle
the business, and the trust should be able to take care of the kids, right? And you see, sadly, like most Zimbabweans, I raise my children for export. Like most farmers will be like, I'm planting for export, right? So we're raising our kids for export. We chuck them in the chess schools, give them the access and accents. So my oldest kids they're now in Europe, right? So one is doing biochemical engineering, the other one is now doing a master's in psychology, right? I'm hoping that just even that, making sure that the best solid sort of foundation, they're going out there, become productive members of society. Very pleased that my daughter hasn't asked me for money in a year or so, right? So obviously she's
making a plan.
She's making a plan. And I think, okay, same thing with me. When I left Zim, I was like 18 years old, and I had to start, ISAP and things are hitting hard back home. So I was also sending money home, and I'm seeing she's a strong, independent young lady who's doing well, and has got a class and does teaching and doing well. And my young boy, he loves producing music. He's very similar to me. But I tell him, dude, you produce hip hop music, And
After labs.
after labs, or
Yeah.
I never had any problems with them going to school and nothing. The thing is, hoping
He's
that
also very smart, like
very smart young lad.
smart driven person. And like
He's
Do
on
you
it.
believe he's doing biochemical engineering?
So
He must be very smart.
So we are at the stage when we're thinking, look, especially the youngest girls, are we trying to bring them up so that they can love where they come from, the land, and then stewarding the land and growing that? Because that's something that cannot be taken away from us. Its title is just theirs, right? Or are they going to wake up and say, no, I also want to be a pharmacist or whatever else? So giving them all those opportunities. But the business itself, we are hoping that even without us being able, should continue, hopefully, thank God
in the
willing.
hands of capable people.
Capable
Like
people,
we've built so many relationships out there that there should be people that are also equally invested, if not more, in our business. And we've seen that even from the Fresh in Box times, that there's some people who would even do it better than we do, you know, and we're grateful that they are joining in that vision.
I think, just to just separate the two answers, what I like about Noma's, what you just said. So we teach something called the 5 Capitals by J.U. So you should just read it up if you like to read. And he talks about families having more than financial capital. So you're looking at that, your social capital, which is what you're alluding to, which is your good name, right? You can go to the bank and they're going to trust you to pay the loan back. And because of the name Musasiwa was what you've done in the community. You can actually then say, I'm not it's coming from that social capital that you or that spiritual capital, the input that your parents have, how they've impacted other people by counseling, teaching, praying for them, whatever it is, right? There's spiritual capital. There are people who are praying for them, who are also wishing them well. And you're collecting all of these different capitals that are outside of money, right? And that's really important. And I like what you said about, it's not about the money first, it's building relationships. And which is what I was saying to you, that sometimes in family businesses, it's the soft things that actually kill the big thing. That we don't have the relationships. That's why we're fighting as siblings. That's why when you have to make a decision to sell the house or get the money, we don't have a framework to talk or communicate. And so all we end up with is conflict. So I actually, you said we don't know it all, but I think you're on a good road. You're on a good path in terms of figuring out what you'd want to see in your family. And, Kuda, like we were talking about earlier, one of the things, I love Africa. I think I'm a Pan-Africanist at heart. When I was much younger, I thought I'd go into politics and do all sorts of things, much to my father's dismay.
Similar.
And what I hated was reading statistics about how low our succession rates are in Africa. And I said, that cannot be because we don't think, or we're not creative, or we don't have order. But I think it's time for us to start having the right conversations. And that's really what the heart of the podcast is about. It's a fire starter for the right conversation in our homes, in our families, in our businesses, right? To say as we're building our enterprises, what does that look like? What impacts us as African families? Who are we as a people? What is continuity? We want to see big, strong brands growing, 50 years. And, the company can change, right? You don't have to stay doing this. Your children can do something different. But you've given them the baton. They know how to start a business. They've seen what it takes. They've seen you do deliveries. They've seen you fail. They've seen you start. They're learning. And however they change or paint a different picture, you still got that continuity in your family. And I think that's really amazing. I genuinely believe that you're on a good path.
Thank you.
I genuinely believe that you're on a good path, and I really enjoyed this conversation. And because I've been married, I was like, I can see where this thing went wrong. Like the level of communication, and for you guys, because it's organic, which is really great. Some people are blessed with that organic chemistry, and then some we have to put in the fertilizer. Like you're saying, Noma, you're saying every 7 days. Every 7 days, come with the AN and, be intentional about that AN going into the plant to make it grow. And then some people are in very good soils that just don't need as much. They flourish. So thank you very much for our listeners and those who are tuned in. I hope you've been inspired. You've learned something. There's so many great things that they dropped, the franchise player. I really like that. the family meetings, those are very important. The AGMs, there's so many things that we can instill as families, even as business partners, right? Outside of boards. Because when you're in a partnership, you're shareholders, you've got a shared vision. Sitting down and saying, okay, we're not discussing with the board. As shareholders, what's, our check-in? Where is this what we want to build? Is this where we're going? And so we've learned so much from Kuda Noma. Thank you very much. Do not forget to subscribe, like, and share to those who are building businesses, those who work in the family business space. Yeah, the podcast is a safe space for you to come and listen, get some lessons, jot things down. And we're always big on implementing, and we're getting so many comments and feedback from you guys, and we really appreciate that. The things that you're implementing after an episode, when we did the 5 capitals, and you're getting feedback on what that was like, implementing it, having the discussion in their families. Even this is couples. If you've listened to this episode and you sat down and you had a conversation with your spouse, or even if you're not a couple, but you're sibling partnership or whatever it is, and you've taken things from this particular episode, please don't forget to send us messages. We want feedback. We want to see how the podcast is impacting your lives and what you're learning. So until next time, keep it in the family and in the business.